This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Once you've learned how to finish songs more effectively, release them to the world using DistroKid's all-in-one platform. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Gabe Miller Music, and welcome to my somewhat definitive, somewhat foolproof process for finishing your songs. Taking an 8-bar loop and fleshing it out into a full song can be a somewhat intimidating or frustrating process, especially if you're first starting out, which was definitely the case for me. And then over time, I was able to kind of figure out this framework for finishing songs that made it much more doable and more straightforward. So these steps are designed to get you out of the mental block of being stuck in this perfect little self-contained 8-bar loop, and designed to help make the process more concrete. I want to start this off with what I'm calling step 0, and this step will set you up for success further down the process. And essentially, step 0 is take advantage of the creative spark when you have it. So when you're in the idea generation stage and you're super creatively inspired, you're working on that 8-bar loop or 16-bar loop or whatever it is, take advantage of that spark and add as many elements as you possibly can. So if you have, for instance, a basic drop, keep adding stuff. Add more synth layers, add more percussion, more effects, maybe even a whole nother section, anything that will raise the energy level when it's added or switched to. Doing that early on when you're creatively inspired will be tremendously helpful for arranging later on. So now you've got your main musical idea or ideas out there and you're ready to start fleshing this out into a full track. This brings us to step 1. Use another song as a reference for the structure of your song. Find a song that is in at least a somewhat similar vein to the song that you're making. This is going to be your reference track. Then sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper and listen to your reference track and write down what happens as you listen to it. Usually in electronic music, something will change either over the course of 8 bars or every 8 bars. So listen to the song from start to finish and write down what changes every 8 bars. For instance, open a hi-hat drops in here, or a synth cutoff is lifted over the course of this 8 bars. Things like that. Once you've gone through the entire song, you'll have basically a roadmap that you can use for arranging your own song. So next up, copy and paste your 8-bar loop across your timeline until you hit 3 to 5 minutes or whatever length you want your song to approximately hit, and start deleting or adding patterns depending on where you are on the song until you've matched what you wrote down on the piece of paper. Then take a listen through it and see how it flows. And of course, at any point you can tweak it to be more appropriate for your own specific song. Going through this process has a few benefits. For one thing, it removes a lot of this ambiguity from the process and gives you a very clear set of steps to follow and a clear way to go for an arrangement that controls the energy level well and that works because it was done by a professional. It's not plagiarism, because the second thing that you'll discover from this is that there are only really a couple set song structures that are used in a lot of electronic music. There's the slowly build up and ratchet the energy level up in stages until you kind of build to the final musical idea. And then there's the intro, breakdown, build, drop structure. And of course, there are lots of other ways for arranging songs and combinations of those structures, but those are kind of the standard ones. And going through this exercise on a few of your own songs will not only mean you've very easily and relatively quickly laid out a few of your songs, but will also give you a much more intuitive feel for how song structure typically works. So that's step 1. Go through that process, and at the end of it, you'll have an arranged song. This was an absolute game changer for me and gave me a lot more confidence moving forward finishing songs. Now, depending on how well you did step 0, there are a couple of different things that you may want to do at this point. If you layered a ton of stuff in step 0 and your arrangement came out really nice and dynamic and interesting throughout in step 1, skip straight to step 3. If the arrangement that you got out of step 1 is okay, but maybe it's a little bit static or a little bit boring, go to step 2, which is basically a bullet list of things that I've found you can do to add interest to a song. Let's say you want to add a new section and you are fresh out of ideas for what you want to do with that section. You just know that you need one in order to fill out your arrangement. things that you could add would be an instrument solo, maybe a guitar solo or a synth solo, something like that. Try to come up with some alternate melodies. Say you want the melody of your second breakdown to be different from your first. So copy out your chord progression and then start riffing over it until you come up with a few melody ideas and then go with the one you like the most. Or you could do the opposite. Copy your main melody over and then write a new chord progression under it. Adding different drums and percussion is a good one. That goes a long way towards changing the energy level. So things like have your drums go double time, vary up the rhythm, add more open hi-hats and cymbals and fast hi-hats and things like that. That will bring the energy level up when they're dropped in. Maybe add drums to your second breakdown as well. So you use your first breakdown as a way to introduce the chord progression and the melody, and then use your second breakdown to reinforce the chord progression and the melody and also introduce some drums. Maybe some little dinky drums. That obviously depends on the song. And of course, there's the idea of adding a unique second drop. A second drop is great because it rewards the listener for listening to a song all the way through, and adding a second drop that's different from the first is not as hard as you think. A couple of easy options for making a second drop different. For one thing, change the genre and or the tempo. So maybe go from dubstep to drum and bass, or go from big room house to trap. Go from electro house to breaks, or house tempo to mid tempo, or something like that. Usually, the genre that you're switching to has some kind of defined genre conventions, and so reformatting your song idea to fit in that genre should be pretty straightforward. You can also do what I'm going to call rationing out your energy levels. Essentially, in your first drop, you spend your time building and adding elements in as the drop goes on. For your second drop, immediately drop it in at the energy level and level of layering that your first drop was at, and then keep building from there. And you can always go for the one drop is more sound design based and one drop is more melodic in nature. That's definitely a bit more high effort, but it's an option that I've definitely used and I've heard work really well in a number of different configurations. My favorite being melodic drop, sound design drop, breakdown and build, back into melodic drop. All right, now we are ready for step 3. So at this point, either your song was interesting enough already, so you skipped straight from step 1 to this step, or you went through step 2 and you're ready to try to lock in your final mix and master. A lot of us electronic music producers, including myself, tend to mix and master as we go, so it's probably already sounding pretty good. But whether you do that or not, step 3 is designed to take you to the level where you know it's done. And step 3 is all about what I'm going to call iterative mixing. So here's what you do. Once you've got your mix and master in at least a decent state, render it out, close your eyes so you're not looking at what your DAW's doing, you're not looking at meters or anything like that, you're just focusing on the music, and listen to the song all the way through. If you feel yourself wanting to open your eyes and immediately go fix something, file that away in your head, and by the end of the song, you'll probably have developed kind of a running checklist of things that you want to go fix. Write it down if you want, and then work through it, checking stuff off as you go, and then repeat. Render it out again, close your eyes and listen through it all the way through again, and you'll know you're done iterating when there's nothing major that you find yourself wanting to reach for and tweak. The other kind of iterative mixing and mastering is something you should do at some point in this process, kind of whenever you feel like it's appropriate, but this is a more comparative approach, and this can be kind of painful, but it's really, really helpful. Essentially, you need to find a song that's in a similar-ish vein to what it is you're making, pull it up, and listen to it side by side with your song. Do not compare things like layering or specifics of how stuff sounds. You are not trying to imitate it. You're simply trying to use this professionally mixed and mastered track as a reality check. And this should mainly apply to sweeping generalities. So things like, is my kick drum way louder than the kick drum in the professionally mixed track? Do I have way too much high end compared to the professionally mastered track? That kind of thing. This will allow you to make adjustments to things that are glaring errors that your ears just got really used to hearing from working on the track for a long time. You tend to lose objectivity. So using a couple of professionally mixed and mastered tracks just as a thing to bounce off of and make sure that there's not something in your track that's making it sound weird or amateur can be a really good idea. One additional step once you've finished a song or a collection of songs is to release it to the world. And to do that, I recommend you use today's sponsor, DistroKid. DistroKid is a very well-liked platform for getting your music onto Spotify, Apple Music, all the regular streaming platforms, and even social media places like YouTube Music, TikTok, and Instagram. Memberships start at just $19.99 per year, and they don't take a cut of anything you sell, and you get unlimited uploads. And if you want to get a 7% discount on your first year, click the link in the description. It helps me out as well. Thank you so much to DistroKid for being a supporter of this channel and for being a supporter of music production YouTube in general.